to fight it off.
Yeah, and there seems to be this idea within the government that the population were incredibly fearful and worried about their children. And I don't think people really were. I don't think anybody really worries about their children getting a cold that much.
They were worried about their children having mental health crises and missing a year of schooling. Much more worried about that.
Absolutely, and that's what we've got now. Now we've got, and there's a whole sort of generation of kids who haven't really re-engaged with the school system, and we're seeing the negative consequences of that now.
I've got a 15-year-old, and I sometimes suddenly remember that he spent a year sort of on and off at school not long ago, and when he went back had to wear a mask and so on. And it seems bizarre, but it's been memory hold, I guess, to some extent. You know, this is the same government, isn't it, that we're living with. We haven't had a general election since then. They haven't been... There's been a clean sweep.
Well, I'm wondering if Matt Hancock was in hock to big teacher. So, because teachers wanted a year off.
Well, there's a lovely...
I mean, not that they worked that hard in the first place.
I'll give you one. This is off my phone direct messages, but somebody shared this one. Something like him saying, Matt Hancock, what a bunch of absolute... I'll say the word, arses the teaching unions are. And Gavin Williamson says, I know, they really do just hate work. That was an exchange on Twitter, on the WhatsApp messages that humanises them to some extent. Do you want to say something on that?
Yeah, just that this is the first thing that's ever made me have sympathy for Gavin Williamson. I never thought it would happen. And yet somehow, to hear that Matt Hancock was mocking him, I mean, this was like, it's a fight between two mice, really. I mean, both of them seem the feeble versions of humans. But Gavin Williamson was getting it right and then had to do another U-turn. I remember the period when we were mocking him for doing all the U-turns. He wasn't the source of at least one of them.
No, I always think that, you know, although it is very tempting to allow your anger to flood your system when you read about government cock-ups, but it's not always obvious who is actually to blame. It's not always obvious who has been just left holding the squalling baby at the end of it all, you know, and any sort of, especially when you have obviously a fairly unprecedented situation like this, where it's not quite clear who has the hierarchy. You know, normally you would know in a school situation, but then you also have a clinical situation, and it would be obvious. But you're trying to integrate these things.
It's important to remember you might not know who's to blame, but someone's to blame.
Yes, let's
not let that get away from us.
And something that comes out that is more substantive is that Matt Hancock didn't test people going into care homes. Which then, you know, I think somebody compared it to a medieval siege, you know, firing diseased carcasses over the city walls.
Or who was it who said that, Churchill, who said that Lenin was sent into Russia like a plague bacillus in a train in about 1916, deliberately in order to stir up trouble. I mean, I have some sympathy for releasing the virus in the care homes.
Somebody wants to inherit a new house.
The long-term benefits to social care challenges, you know, and the property crisis and all the rest of it.
You know, you could do that. You could do that with a machine gun as well.
But this would have alleviated all sorts of potential guilt that people might have felt about it. Anyway,
about using a machine gun.
Yeah, that's true. The Eye now, Steve, and a chicken story.
We've gone from Plague 1 to Plague 2, the sequel, bird flu. You thought corona was bad. Have a look at this. UK chickens are going to get jabs to stop the bird flu spreading to humans. It's not near that at the moment. It's I think they've got a tier system, and even that gives me the cold sweats, but it's different levels, not like we had. Level 3 is when there's mutations in the bird flu, which means it can go from mammal to mammal, which already I think we need to rename it. We've got it wrong if we're calling it bird flu, and it's mixed. There's in the story...
It's almost as bad as the China virus.
Yes,
they're trying to blame the poor birds.
Well, which is, I mean, this is more of a sexist thing, I suppose.
Yeah.
There's a story of an otter that caught it and died and was autopsied. Oh, not the otters. Didn't they expect otters?
They can't call it cock flu, I suppose, can they? Because that would be really... That would probably create all sorts of unfortunate memes.
And that's probably used as a nickname for a different disease.
I can't understand... I mean, you wouldn't want to see the sneezing. I don't understand why...
Laptops filthy.
I don't know. I mean, if you can get an injection that stops it spreading, they didn't manage to come up with one of those for us, did they?
Yeah.
It turned out.
And also, how do you find a vein in a chicken? It's covered in feathers.
I know, and they treat them very badly, and they're very, what's the word, peremptory, the sort of, you know, I mean, they do give them hormones, I think, to make them grow faster, don't they? So perhaps it could be just mixed in with that. I don't know, but I can't see an ongoing health protocol being applied to a chicken.
Well, distancing.
You know, how are you feeling today?
Distancing and broiler chickens, they're all rammed in.
They'd love distancing, wouldn't they?
They're all going to start faking bird flu, aren't they? I really think I need 6 feet in either direction. What have we got next? Leo, you're having a look at the Times.
That's right. So Suella Braverman has come out against Muslim advocacy groups, saying they pursued harmful and dishonest narratives due to political correctness creating a blind spot in which Islamist extremists have operated under our radar and inside, mainstream groups that are supposed to be there for, the promotion of Muslim rights, such as Mend and Cage. And she blames this. She lays the blame, fairly squarely on our own security services. She picks out Prevent for particular criticism for failing to tackle Islamist radicalisation. And Prevent hit the headlines recently because it said that works of Shakespeare and Tolkien and Yes Minister were far-right radicalisation.
Red flags. You see that on somebody's bookshelf. I was thinking all the care and attention I took to remove all the problematic text from my bookshelves before going on Zoom calls.
Yeah, so because our security services are so woke, I hate to use that word, but they're so woke. They're just in hock to social justice.
Well, this is the William Shawcross report, isn't it?
Yeah, they've
teased this out.
They've focused on basically centre-right commentary. Basically what we do in this show, and said that's as much of a risk as people building suicide vests and going into pop concerts.
I think it's quite interesting that this has come. It's not directly connected, but it's come at the same time as this Wakefield outrage with the child being expelled for having scuffed a copy of the Quran. I think a lot of people are currently aware that there's an amount of pressure being allowed to build. Well, that's not necessarily being expressed through high explosives.
There's a huge amount of asymmetry in the way we deal with different. I mean, can you imagine a Bible? People being outraged over a Bible being scuffed. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, I should imagine our security services pay drag queens to go into schools and wipe their bum on the Bible.
Let's just have a quick look at what they regard as the main story. The NHS plan to help millions stop using antidepressants and also painkillers, which they are worried can be addictive.
Yeah, well, this is more... Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to chip in and say art classes could replace it, which, I mean, I'm all for finding things that aren't just the drugs.
Yes.
But I'd rather take drugs and sit through art classes. Come on, there must be an easy way. It'd depress me more.
It's interesting. They actually said that. I mean, this is probably just written in a hurry, but they seem to suggest that would replace painkillers such as tramadol or codeine being sent to art, music or gardening classes. Yeah, that might help if you were using antidepressants and hadn't really quite realised that the reason you're depressed is you stay inside, you do nothing, what do they call it, doom scrolling through Twitter. It doesn't help. Yeah. There's no question. Poor light.
And antidepressants, I mean, SSRIs, not codeine and not tramadol, but proper antidepressants are way overprescribed and they don't actually give the benefits they're supposed to. And there's a lot of side effects. And it's to the point, it's either a third or a half of all adult women are on antidepressants.
It's crazy how easy it is to...
I was going to say, there are also serious side effects to art classes. No one wants to see your watercolour.
Well, what about when you refused a place in art college? That can go really badly wrong for the whole of humanity at that point. The Daily Star to finish off with, they seem to be quite convinced that Jeremy Clarkson has queered his pitch for the millionaire seat. Yeah,
saying he's not getting the contract renewed. And it looks like, well, actually, I say it looks, it's pure speculation, but why not? It's the front page of the Star, that it's because of saying something about Meghan. I mean, the column, even he apologised for it, saying, that gag didn't land in the way that he wanted. But then to lose this job, but there's so many more variables. Maybe the contract was not going to be renewed
I never thought he was a great pick for it, to be honest. I used to quite enjoy it with Tarrant. I haven't enjoyed it with him, and I do quite like him, but I like him when he's able to editorialise. I like him when he's writing his columns, and I like watching him knee-deep in a ploughed field trying to restart a diesel tractor that he's put the wrong fuel into. That's amusing. Yeah. He's not a game show host, I don't think. Yeah, his opinions and his character can't really come across, and so you're basically a seat filler doing Millionaire. It's a waste, and he doesn't need the money, so I'm up for it. So, that's the front pages. Join us after the break for more COVID revelations, which we will segue nicely into China. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView, Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Simon J. Evans, Leo H. Kearse and Steve N. Allen. So, those patronymics in place. Leo, Telegraph first, not surprisingly. Of the many revelations to come from this leak, this is among the most enraging, I think.
Yeah, this is hilarious. So English school children had to wear masks because ministers didn't want a political row with Nicola Sturgeon.
Extraordinary.
So they decided that devolved parliaments could set their own COVID rules, and obviously that created this arms race where the devolved parliaments wanted to look tougher on COVID and keeping you safer than Westminster. So Nicola Sturgeon was like, oh, we're going to put masks on all the children, and unfortunately not to stop chips going on their faces. Should have done that a while ago. But then to keep up with it, Boris Johnson had to go along and mandate masks for English children, despite England's Chief Medical Officer Chris Whitty saying there were no very strong reasons to do so.
He made some extraordinary... I mean, I'll be honest with you, I was not terribly impressed by Whitty, although it may have been partly, you know, manner and you know, I don't know, his whole... like his presentational skills, they lacked drive and energy and verve, didn't they, Chris Whitty? There was something of the sort of three-toed sloth about him. But
it was very public sector.
But I mean, he said that there's no strong argument for it or no strong argument against it. So maybe it would be easier just to do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, come on, this is quite important.
Yeah.
It's not like going, shall I take my umbrella or not? I bet if I take it, it doesn't rain. But if I don't, I don't mind. You know, that's fine.
Yeah, this is millions of children we're affecting,
exactly.
you know?
Extraordinary.
Yeah.
Steve?
I mean, at least he was giving the scientific advice, and we were told people were following the science, and that's my favourite discipline, so I'm now more annoyed.
The science.
The science.
It was just science.
Yeah, but now
That's
we've got
a bit
the article
like
in
the
there.
Facebook, isn't it?
I listened to the Oasis.
Yeah.
And but stop taking the science name in vain.
Yeah.
Because now it turns out they just didn't want to look bad in a row. Politicians not wanting to look bad is going to be the bottom line of this.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
And Matt Hancock is so all about his own image. Just get away from the TV. Every time he comes back for another interview or something to try and look good, it's not going to work because in your core, you're not good. So stop showing us who you are.
But all that, every attempt to play politics and kind of second guess what the other guys were going to do always ends badly.
So I've got some sympathy here because nobody wants to look like they're keeping children less healthy than Scottish children.
No,
I mean, if that's the barometer, you want to be above it.
Nobody wants to look like they're more of a psycho than Nicholas. Generally speaking, that's true. Steve, staying with the Telegraph and the Hancock files, further evidence that kids were thrown under the bus for the sake of an easy life, part 2.
Yeah, meanwhile, in WhatsApps, the government knew that there was no robust rationale to include the children in the rule of 6. Even these phrases bring me back in the cold sweats, remembering rule of 6. So it's similar to the rest of them, that it's all about how the government looks. They're more worried about their image than anything else. So the rule limited the number of people that could gather in one place, but if you include kids and you've got a few kids, that's it, you're shut down straight away.
Yeah.
But in Scotland and Wales, they had an exemption for this. So actually, we could have been chasing to look as good as other parts of the UK, but for some reason in this one, no.
Yeah.
Helen Whately, who sent a message saying that she wanted to hallucinate in Tier 1, tears. But Matt Hancock, again, was saying that they didn't want to move on this.
They didn't want to move on it. That's interesting, isn't it? Again, it feels like it's a messaging thing. It feels like it was kind of, they didn't want to look as if they were dithering or weak or they'd had to re-examine the evidence.
Yes, in a different part of the communication, they say it's about easier communication. Easier to communicate rule of 6 rather than saying does not include kids. I think we're not that stupid that we can't understand,
I have a tiny bit of sympathy
for roller coasters.
Yeah.
You know?
I have a tiny bit of sympathy with that. There are some people who struggle with,
they deserve
subordinate clauses.
They deserve to die out anyway.
And they are the people who are likely to have had 5 or 6 kids as well, and haven't worked out they can't afford them.
To have a policy that there's no robust rationale for, but just because it's easier to communicate. I mean, I can see how Nazi Germany happened.
Yeah.
It's like, well, this is a terrible idea, but it's easy to communicate.
Well, there was an element of that, wasn't there? If you have any Jewish blood in you at all, it's out, and they had a similar thing in America, of course, where they got that policy from, the one-drop rule, which is still used to this day. If you have any Negro blood, as the term would have been then, that you were tainted by it. And it is extraordinary how that can just appeal to people who are trying to set up a little tyranny on the hoof.
Yeah.
Because it just simplifies everything and everyone goes, oh, well, that's the rule then, I guess.
Yeah.
There's no room for... You find that in our own lives. We always know when there seems to be a little bit of room for negotiation, a little bit of wriggle room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Try and get into work for around 10 a.m.
See at 10:25.
Exactly. However, in this case, not good. China now, Leo, and evidence months ago that we were right about the source of the pandemic on this show as well.
Yeah. Despite headliners and GB News being castigated as conspiracy theorists, it turns out the FBI, no other than the FBI.
To be fair, they are pretty good conspiracy theorists as well. The FBI.
Yeah. I mean, we're not dealing with who shot JFK or even who shot JR here, but the FBI believe that COVID-19 originated in a Chinese-controlled government lab. So that's according to the director of the FBI.
Yeah.
Says the FBI has for some now assessed that the origins of the pandemic are most likely a potential lab incident in Wuhan. That's what I thought as well.
Yeah.
And I was called a far-right extremist conspiracy theorist, all the rest of it. The real conspiracy around the Wuhan lab leak, which was the idea was quashed in the left-wing media, and fact checkers and everybody said, no, this is a right-wing conspiracy. The real conspiracy is that 27 scientists signed a letter in the Lancet, which used to be a respected medical publication, saying that the Wuhan lab leak theory had no justification, there was no basis or evidence for it. They all had connections to the lab. They were all, to some extent, in the pay of the Chinese government, and obviously pushing their own false narrative. And that is an actual conspiracy. That's not a theory.
That is true. And the World Health Organization seemed implicated as well, including, was it his name, Tedros, whose line suddenly went dead when he was asked what Taiwan were up to.
Yeah, that's one step away from just holding it, pretending it's frozen.
Extraordinary. I mean, one thing that needs addressing here is the term comes up regularly. They've assessed that with low confidence that the pandemic is likely to have stemmed from a laboratory leak, and some people are going, well, that, you know, so they don't know. Yeah. Well, the point is they're saying it's tilted away from 50-50 in the direction of the lab leak as against the other thing. So it's still considerably more likely that it's a lab leak than that it's the other thing. They just haven't.
And we may never know, because obviously the Chinese government are very opaque. But early on in the pandemic, the New York Post ran a story about lab technicians at the lab selling the cadavers of the animals to basically butchers at the wet market, which, I mean, obviously is a way for viruses to get into us, because, you know, you eat a bat.
If they did that, I mean, that would be like a smoking gun, and I mean, that would be a hot gun, wouldn't it?
Yeah, the smoking pangolin.
I love this quote. This is the response from the Chinese Foreign Ministry. A lab leak is extremely unlikely, and that's the authoritative scientific conclusion reached by a joint team of experts from China and the WHO after they had visited related labs and had deep exchanges with scientists and researchers.
I bet the WHO are kind of sweating right now.
We had a serious... Did you leak it? Did you? No. OK, then. Well, any more on that, Steve?
Well, I was just going to say, we need to make sure that we don't let this convince too many people on the internet, because you shouldn't have the thought going, well, if this is right, I must be right about everything I think about chemtrails.
But that is the danger, of course, of them trying to present everyone who has a perfectly reasonable question, even, of getting them blocked and banned. And people were thrown off Twitter just for kind of saying, I don't know, it seems odd to me that this outbreak should occur within cycling distance of the world's #1 viral, virology investigation.
Yeah, my YouTube channel was demonetised for mentioning it. So, basically these the Guardian owe me loads of money.
Steve, back to the Telegraph, and dastardly Chinese authorities are up to their tricks again. Yeah. This time suppressing dissent, though not at least with tanks.
Beijing impersonated foreign journalists to spy on Chinese activists. Oh, so they can do our accents.
Yes.
So apparently they pretended to be a bureau chief and a reporter from Reuters.
Do you think they did, like, sort of Dick Van Dyke? All right, then, what's all this about a protest?
But then I'd say, who heard that and thought, this checks out? Let's give all the info. But it was online and it was through Telegram and stuff. I mean, there's another way of writing this headline, which is spies did spying. Yeah. It's not that shocking, is it? You know,
it's not that shocking, and actually by Chinese standards, it's fairly route one. And we obviously know for a fact, it's fairly well established that Putin has a team, a department, which not only spies on protesters and activists, it creates them. It sets up units and hires them so that they know exactly how they've come together, and it uses them to attract potential dissident belief.
And also each part of the security apparatus spies on other parts of the security apparatus, so nobody can, foment a sort of coup against them.
And to be fair, that's pretty much what used to happen in Le Carré novels in this country as well. I mean, if you're going to set up a spying outfit, this is fairly straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, there's no balloons involved. This really is, as you say, very basic. It's an online scam. They pretended to be on social media, so they got catfished, and to try and find out people who were organising
it's China, so they'd eat the catfish.
Yeah. Part 2 is over. Join us after the break with stories about TikTok, that's the Chinese up to it again, YouTube, and something called books. See you in a couple of minutes.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities.
especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
And welcome back to Headliners. Steve, over to you now with the Times. And imagine, if you will, a world in which the government had to pay science fiction writers to imagine possible futuristic scenarios that they should plan for.
You don't have to imagine it because it's real. This isn't a Twilight Zone. Yes, sci-fi writers have been drafted in by the Ministry of Defence to imagine Third World War. They came up with 8 stories.
Crazy!
Bad, yeah. I mean, this is their science and technology laboratory. As they got a pair of writers in for 8 futuristic visions of the world, including cyborg soldiers, post-petroleum war. It's a jolly. They've somehow used our money to commission their own Netflix miniseries.
It's fantastic. I have nothing but respect for the writers who managed to worm their way into this scenario. Yeah. It's a nice little... Do we have their names, incidentally, or any of the books they've written?
I can give you some of the actual names of the
writers. Yeah, I couldn't find them in the course of the story. I had to look through and I couldn't find them. But anyway.
But it goes through some of the stories that they've written for them. I mean, look, sci-fi writers do get stuff right. And the point of this is the guesswork, which is what it is, of sci-fi writers, sometimes is on the money. Famously, Arthur C. Clarke gave us geostationary satellites.
Yes.
Someone else had to do the trickier bit of building one.
I think he had a pretty good idea of the internet about 20 years before David Bowie, even.
But also at the same But at the same time, they've also guessed loads of stuff that's wrong. I remember watching Tomorrow's World in the 80s, where they had robots playing snooker, and yet somehow 2023, and I'm playing it manually like a caveman.
Well, famously, there was the other one about computers will change everything, and in the next 10 years, there'll probably be one in every town.
Yeah, a huge one every town.
Miniaturisation is the thing that got away from them in that period. But my point with this is, you don't need to pay them. There are already thousands of books which imagine scenarios which it would be perfectly useful and plausible and a good use of the government's or a department's time to sort of, comb through and just...
But their brief was to be more realistic than just writing, which includes one with these British troops that wear armour containing drugs to enhance their performance, allowing them to skate at 30 miles an hour and have contact lenses that flash up messages from teammates. I thought you were saying be realistic.
And then
Why
they use that story.
On ice?
They have that story, and then the punchline is that they have, like, the World War I football match at the end of it or something, and they all sit down and have a nice... Do you think sci-fi holds the answer?
No.
I think it can. I think it can provoke and trigger interesting conversations, and I don't think it's a bad idea to have writers. There's a place called the Santa Fe Institute, which it's been my dream, like, retirement plan. It's basically it's like a university, but it's all coffee shops essentially. There's no labs. It's just people hanging out and chatting and talking. And a writer called Cormac McCarthy, you know him? He wrote The Road and a number of quite grisly westerns. He was their writer in residence for a number of years there. He became fascinated by such things as why dreams can reveal truths that are hidden from you yourself. Why would your subconscious hide something and then reveal it to you in a dream, which has happened in scientific inquiry and stuff. So anyway, he was quite a useful, I think, a benign presence. I think there's something to it, but this feels a little bit, I don't know.
Doesn't need to be funded, does it? The MOD don't need to do it. I'm sure they've got other stuff to be paying attention to.
Anyway, Leo, the Star now, TikTok have finally taken note of the sinister sound of time draining away that is captured within their very name.
So all TikTok users under the age of 18 will automatically be given a new 60-minute screen time limit on the app in the next few weeks, and parents will have access to additional controls. I'm not really sure why they've done it. I mean, it'll be bad for their business. There'll be less adverts in front of Western youth, and it'll also be less degeneracy and confusion sown within the minds of Western youth, which is exactly what TikTok is there to do.
Of course.
It follows on from a story we're not covering, but about China spending billions on pro-Russian propaganda, and this is part of it. This is part of their way to destabilise the West. Other ways they do it is through fentanyl. The majority of fentanyl is manufactured in China, then goes into drugs in the West, makes heroin cheaper and also more fatal.
To be fair, that's how we won the 19th century against China. So I suppose, what goes around comes around to some extent.
But that's the excuse. That's the excuse people say for anything bad that happens to this country. Though, well, we did bad things. It's like
we did specifically do that one thing.
I wasn't around to do the bad things then, so I don't feel like I deserve bad things to happen to me.
That's possibly true. I don't know about the. I don't know why they've done it. But my guess is because they can see which way the wind is blowing and they want to look responsible, because it obviously isn't good for them, is it?
There are government bans. TikTok's going to be banned on government devices in the European Union, and I think other Western countries will follow suit. And in America, they're looking at banning TikTok outright.
I think in Canada as well, possibly. Not that matters particularly. I think it's quite interesting that, I think we may have mentioned this before, but I don't suppose everyone watches every single programme. In China itself, TikTok is used very differently, right? They have sort of educational...
bat recipes.
Yeah.
Their version of the app is a different app.
Yeah, right. So you can't compare it at all.
Yeah, I suppose not.
But the way, I found it as well. I don't have TikTok uploaded on my phone. I never visit TikTok knowingly. But sometimes there's a video on Twitter that somebody's posted and I play it. And when I'm trying to close it, instead my thumb does the wrong thing and
subscribes.
It opens the next video and you think, where's that come from?
Before you know it, you're on OnlyFans. You've got a direct debit set up.
Steve, staying with the sinister side of social media, The Guardian have a headline that involves the words children and harvesting, which is never a good sign, in my opinion.
Yeah, in comparison, this isn't too bad. This is data harvesting, if you have to pick one. Duncan McCann suing YouTube for harvesting the data of UK children, breaking this new age-appropriate design code. And so he's from this child advocacy group called Five Rights, which I think they make burgers. And they are taking this issue because you shouldn't be doing this, but also YouTube say they're not doing this. YouTube has a system where, most things online, most of this social media version of the internet isn't for people under 13. No. You're not meant to be using it, but there's no real policing. So if you just go,
do you remember as well, there was a big scandal, it might have been before GBNews, but they discovered that there was sort of content on YouTube, the way that one video automatically leads on to the next one, that young people would start off watching a legitimate episode of Peppa Pig, and 20 videos later they'd be watching some really weird, quite disturbing sort of, badly created, not like porn or something, but just something in which a weird mashup of Peppa Pig episodes had been put together.
Or drag queen stuff. If children, there was somebody in America logged onto YouTube as a child, started watching cartoons, and it started offering all this gender ideology, queer theory stuff, blokes in wigs.
I find it just as bad at when you're trying to watch porn if you don't press the right buttons. Like 6 videos later, episode of Peppa Pig.
Hot stuff, Peppa Pig. That's a pun. Leo, Mail now. Advice I think anyone who enters the GB News building should probably pay attention to.
So it says, are you at risk of being cancelled? And I was, actually. But it says everybody's at risk of being taken to task and publicly ousted if we make certain mistakes, especially if we have a no-holds-barred approach to voicing our bold opinions online. So it says, while being cancelled can be good, it can get you notoriety, get you fame and followers. And some people make a career out of it. That can backfire. I mean, Katie Hopkins was over-cancelled and then lost her column and other avenues, some social media. Lawrence Fox, who just voiced perfectly reasonable opinions on Question Time, had his acting career taken away from him. I mean, it's sort of like living in the Soviet Union. We all know that what we've got to say is a lie, but we've got to say it. I was talking to somebody in the music industry tonight who was saying, they can't like my tweets because they'd get opprobrium for liking them. And so we've all got to say what we know is a lie just to not be...
And then
underneath it all, there's black markets and we're all, enjoying ourselves vicariously in dark underground rooms where nobody can see us.
There are people, I think, who do deliberately sort of push against it, rather than just simply speaking their truth and damn the torpedoes or whatever the term is. Occasionally you see people, you're just thinking, why are you doing that? You're clearly trying to attract some sort of weird attention. But it is absolutely not those. I don't have any interest in those people who are trying to play some kind of media game, and that usually ends badly, just as it did for Diana. It's people I remember one of the very earliest ones was that he was a chemist, I think, from Imperial College, who would... He gave an address in a foreign conference and made some joke about the difficulties of co-educational labs, of being distracted by young women, when he was trying to concentrate on... And it was called out by an American journalist, and he had his tenureship and everything cancelled. This was a few years ago. But these are the kind of cancellations that I think everyone should be worried about. Not so much like pop star deliberately, says something outrageous and goes too far.
I think, you're saying, people say deliberately outrageous things to deliberately get cancelled, make a career out of it. I think the mainstream media says deliberately obvious lies. We saw it with Isla Bryson being sentenced to prison. Transgender woman, Isla Bryson is sentenced, and it's like, that's not a trans woman.
Provoking you to speak the truth, absolutely. This was one interesting thing as well. It said, I think it was interesting. It said, this is the chap talking, somebody at Ignite, which is it's basically a PR agency, a damage limitation specialist who have realised there's money in this particular sort of scene of modern society. But it says, in many cases, it can be seen as justice. If someone was found to be sexist, racist, homophobic, or physically, emotionally, or sexually abusive, then that person getting cancelled can be seen as justified. I think even that's kind of slightly sinister. You can cancel them on a personal level, of course. If I've discovered that a friend had views or opinions or had behaved badly in a certain way, I might decide I don't want to see them again. But I still don't think it's entirely necessarily. If somebody is homophobic, does that mean they're not suited for a certain job?
Well, and it's also the difference of how you act on that first moment. If you see something you disagree with, you could reply, let's pretend it's Twitter, to that tweet with saying, I disagree because of this. But there's also a move that will be replying, saying to next person who books them, you're booking people like this? A deliberate thing of trying to get people's work removed.
Absolutely.
That happened to me the other day. Somebody tagged the Adelaide Fringe and the Brighton Fringe on Twitter, said, why are you following this bigot? And they unfollowed me.
Oh, really?
Thereby implying, I'm not going to be able to do the Brighton... Well, I don't want to do the Brighton Fringe anyway. But...
Good for you. Steve, back to the Telegraph now before the break. Not further revelations about Matt Hancock, unless, of course, your children want to dress up as him for World Book Day.
He wrote a book with a journalist. I'm not sure if they're still friends, him and the journalist. Cancel culture is affecting World Book Day. Look, my kid's not old enough for me to know about this. We don't have to dress him up. But apparently, World Book Day means you have to dress your child as a character from a book. And I do remember, however many years ago, when the biggest book of the year was 50 Shades. And everyone was trying. It's terrible. That should get people
when
cancelled.
our kids were at school, it was, it was so many Harry Potters. It was ridiculous, because it's quite easy, the round glasses and the, cape.
Yeah, the David Bowie
And
style.
that, of course, would be one example. I guess Roald Dahl's characters are another example.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They point out there are certain things that you can't dress your children as because it's problematic. Sombrero, no. Blackface, I'm very much presuming no. I did a gig last night where I had to dress as a tuxedo and look like James Bond, and I had to remove all of the racism from the material. But yeah, there's a big list of things that you can't dress your kid as. I mean, I'd say just go as your favourite character from your favourite religious text.
Yes, what could possibly go wrong? Winnie the Pooh, that would be a good one to go as.
So are the schools
Nothing
actually...
on the bottom half.
Are the schools...
It's just a red T-shirt.
Are the schools actually putting the ban? Are the schools actually banning certain costumes?
I mean, the article just more lists things that would get you in trouble.
Yeah.
It's actually...
I don't think it would.
No.
I think a lot of this culture war stuff just happens on Twitter. And then if you actually go to school dressed as an Oompa Loompa, everybody will be like...
I think you get away with pretty much everything, including Harry Potter. That's it for this section. Trust me, if you drink red wine, you'll want to be here for the next. Get your cheese board ready. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
It knows. Hello. Welcome back to Headliners. Leo, Metro now. And if ever there was a story that was just giving people what they want to hear.
Yes, so this is leading British scientist, epidemiologist Professor Tim Spector says we should aim to drink thousands of different types of red wine. He says it improves our health, a wide range of grape varieties, boosts our immune system, fights diseases, and even improves mental health. And it's nothing to do with the fact that he's just opened an off-licence. So he says don't drink more than half a bottle of wine or it'll have negative impacts, presumably from being drunk.
That's the only bit of that advice that I can take any issue with at all. I think don't drink less than half a bottle. No, don't drink more.
Yeah. I mean, surely the more you drink, the healthier you get.
Absolutely. I mean, why does he want us to stop just when we're getting better?
Yeah.
I think he is interesting, though, this guy, Tim Spector. My wife is aware of him. Several people have started mentioning his name. I was trying to remember, there's some product I think he is selling, but he hasn't mentioned it in this story.
Hangover pills.
That is, well, I think it is one of these gut biome type things. It is like you mentioned, the Yakult or whatever. But as you said, as we were discussing in the break, the trouble is that, people want lots of interesting gut bacteria, but the truth is most of the things that really have them in substantial quantities are pretty disgusting.
Oh, yeah. I interviewed a doctor once who was saying, actually, you could just, lick a toilet seat and you'd get a mixture of bacteria and your body fights off the bad ones, you get all the good ones. But who wants to be a toilet seat licker?
I spoke to somebody, I wish I could remember who it was. It might come back to me. I think it's a father of... from the school or something. He has got a daughter whose poo has been identified as particularly beneficial to people. And so she sells it now, and it's put into little capsules that you can take as a...
The poo transplant?
Yeah. And you swallow it it's like those little sort of cellulose capsules, like you get things in from Holland and Barrett, but to stop them tasting as they go down.
Doesn't your stomach acid just kill all the bugs and stuff?
Apparently not. I don't know exactly how that works. No, I mean, I assume they do. I don't know. Maybe the capsule is powerful enough to get into your gut first. Well, it's like the Fantastic Voyage or something.
Friend of the show, Paul, says that we get fecal transplants from sitting on public transport, so other people's poo particles go up and enter us.
And that would be such a good sales pitch from TfL, wouldn't it? Guardian now, Stephen, as they might have said 280 million years ago, see you later, pollinator.
Yep, so this won't take long to cover this one. Scientists discover fossil, possibly the oldest potential pollinator. They found this earwig-like insect that was covered in pollen, so either it goes around pollinating things or it just had the sexiest time with some bees. It's difficult to know. Nearly 200 million years ago, the problem with these stories, and I love the science, don't get me wrong, but it's just about degree. We already know that old things were found, and this is older.
This is quite a lot. This is several tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of years earlier than we thought it was, but still.
We can't imagine that scale, can we?
No.
Yeah, but pollination is disgusting.
Pollination is flower rape. That's what it is.
Absolutely.
Daily Star now, Leo, quickly moving through these stories, operating somewhat above their pay grade, the Daily Star here, I suspect, as they attempt to cover the latest attempt to integrate human and machine intelligence.
So a group of scientists are developing something called organoid intelligence, which uses real human brain cells as powerful biological computers. So we're reaching the limits of what's possible with microchips. They're looking at human brain cells to make, a really good, smart computer.
Yeah.
Probably, well, given that sentence, probably not my brain cells.
I do have some... I mean, I think there's some justification for feeling enthusiasm about man and machine coming together, right? You know, like 20 years ago, chess computers started beating humans.
Yeah.
And then it really took off, and the best chess computers now have a score massively above.
But we can walk over and kick the chess computer to
but
death.
we don't. Even better yet, the best chess-playing organism is a cyborg. A man and machine working together will beat the best chess computer.
Right.
So even the best chess computer is made slightly better if it has a bloke with it, not just like looking smart, stopping people kicking the plug out. Anyway, Steve, mail now. I'm really shooting through these. Finally, a Jack I do earwig, although I'm not sure I Adam and Eve it, me old China.
What? One of us has had a stroke. No, Cockney accent's moved. It's not in London anymore. It's moved out to Essex.
Yeah.
Accents do this, but you won't find it in London as much. I guess if you're looking for an accent in London, you think who owns the property, so Russian. But now it's moved out more to Essex. I love some of the examples they give for Cockney rhyming slang.
Yeah.
Ruby Murray for curry, Donald Duck, and then it was in one of the other papers.
Donald Duck for luck, and then it said, do that one in that list. It said bottle for copper, right?
Bottle and stopper.
Yeah.
That's nonsense. Bottle is arse. That's well known.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Losing your bottle.
Yeah.
And do you know what that's short for? Bottle and glass. Arse.
Lovely.
Yeah.
And then that's why you also say you're Aris, which sounds a bit like arse, but is not just a mispronunciation of arse. It's Aristotle. Bottle. Bottle and glass. It's a double.
A double one?
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Amazing.
On the list, there was one about jug, as in jugs of beer ears. I know, because if you're sat
Jug-eared?
there... No, it's like nice jugs.
Oh,
jugs
I
of beer
see.
ears.
Yeah.
But if you're sat there on a park bench and a woman walks past and you say, look at the jugs on that.
Yeah, you're not
it's going to be
complimenting your ears, are you?
You've got to be cancelled for something else.
Finally, a daily story in the Daily Slug and Snail that will divide the nation between haters of the council and haters of BMW drivers.
So a BMW owner has been fined £650 after a disabled bay was painted around his car while it was parked. So, I mean, this is classic. This is classic government. This is just some little apparatchik who's gone along who probably drives a Nissan Micra, sees this BMW and has decided to paint a... you can't do that. Surely you can't do that.
It was parked there for several weeks, they say, and they put signs up. They go, mate, we're going to paint... You're going to be stuck here, and he didn't come back.
Yeah, but you're allowed to park for several weeks. It's not a crime. You shouldn't have to.
We should say, before anyone gets too hot under the collar, the council have agreed to refund everything except the first price, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I would care more. The whole story, I don't...
We've got to move on. It's wonderful. The show is nearly over, so let's take another quick look at Thursday's front pages. The Daily Mail has Carrie, keep killer behind bars, killer pilot behind bars. The Telegraph, Hancock's rearguard action to shut down schools. The iNews have UK chickens may get jabs to stop bird flu spread in humans. Guardian, confidence in COVID inquiry hit after leak of Hancock's messages. The Times, with an NHS plan to help millions stop using antidepressants and painkillers. And finally, the Daily Star, can we phone a friend, please? That is the end of Jeremy Clarkson hosting Millionaire. Possibly those were your front pages. That's all we have time for. Thanks for joining us for tonight's show. Thanks to my guests, Leo Kirsten, Steve and Adam. Remember, if you're watching the 5 a.m. repeat, stay tuned for the breakfast show just after the break. Thank you and good night.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview channel 236.
And YouView channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, it's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg. Tune in tonight at 8 p.m. for State of the Nation. Tonight, joining me is the former chief Brexit negotiator, the Lord Frost, who will give us a taste of what it was like in the EU's negotiation room. Plus, the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, will be here to provide one of his infamous rants. All that coming up and much more at 8 p.m. on State of the Nation.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight with Patrick Christys. Following the explosive leak of Matt Hancock's WhatsApp messages during lockdown, did the disgraced former health secretary lie to the public about placing a protective ring around care homes? And after these bombshell revelations, should Hancock face a criminal investigation for his pandemic failings? Join Patrick 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. on GB News.
Well, a very major leak of Matthew Hancock's WhatsApp messages, casting great doubt over some of his judgments. I don't like the way it's all been leaked, but is it time for the truth? Why have we not yet had an inquiry, a government inquiry released, as many other European countries have? We'll do Rish's reveal. We'll go through what was said at Windsor and what the European Union is saying, and we'll work out what is actually true. We'll go to the Isle of Man, where some very brave parents are standing up against real poison that was taught to 11-year-olds, and Danielle Lloyd will join me on Talking Pints. But before all of that, let's get the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nigel, thank you. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. Some breaking news to bring you. The remains have been found in the search for the 2-month-old baby of Constance Martin and Mark Gordon. Detective Superintendent Lewis Basford gave an update from the Metropolitan Police just now. Well, earlier on, the police applied for a 36-hour extension to detain Constance and Mark Gordon. They said they feared the child had come to serious harm, and we've now found out that breaking news that the remains have been found. Well, the newborn's parents, who spent 53 days on the run, have been further arrested on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter. We'll bring you more as we get it. The parents of a morbidly obese 16-year-old girl have been jailed for gross negligence manslaughter in the first televised court hearing in Wales. Kayla Titford was found dead at her home in Newton in 2020 after suffering from an infection caused by extreme obesity. At the time of her death, she weighed nearly 23 stone and she had a BMI of 70. Her mother admitted the charge and was jailed for 6 years. Her father, who pled not guilty, was sentenced to 7 years and 6 months. The Prime Minister says we must wait for the results of the official inquiry before judging the government's handling of the COVID pandemic. It comes after The Telegraph claimed former Health Secretary Matt Hancock rejected advice from the Chief Medical Officer to test all residents before allowing them to enter a care home. A spokesperson for Mr Hancock says thousands of his WhatsApp messages have been stolen and doctored to create a false story. The Greek Transport Minister has resigned after 2 trains collided, killing at least 36 people and injuring more than 85. The intercity train was carrying over 300 passengers when it hit a freight train near the city of Larissa. A station master in charge of signalling has been arrested and charged with causing mass deaths through negligence. Firefighters say the death toll is expected to rise. Labour is calling for victims of the Turkey earthquakes to be granted temporary UK visas. Opposition MPs want the visa scheme to be available for families that have had to flee after quakes struck their country and Syria in early February, leaving at least 50,000 dead. And for our television viewers, hold your breaths, for this near miss on what seems a quiet residential road in West Sussex turns into something a little more dramatic.